The third installment of keyboard movements is here. Hope you're excited. So I'm very excited. Can you tell? Go find your keyboard movement 2 that we made from before, which should be somewhere on your H drive. So you can open up. Why am I doing it this way? Go open up your Windows Explorer again, just like we did last time, and find keyboard movement 2, copy and paste it just like we did with keyboard movement 1, and then rename it to keyboard movement 3. This should take you 2 seconds to do. Once you open up Windows Explorer, find your file, yada yada yada. We have this now, Mr. Davis keyboard movement 3. You should have your name, obviously. Open that up, and we're going to make a couple of changes. First thing we're going to do, we're going to add a little bit of easing to our player, and so they're not so quick really to jump around or stop. And you can add sort of like an ice level or something along those lines, but we need to store both our X speed and our Y speed in different variables. And how that's going to work is, instead of speed, we want to say X speed, okay, and set that equal to 0, and we'll have a Y speed also equal to 0. This is not how fast our player is going to go, but it's instead going to hold how fast they are currently going. So we need some kind of number to indicate how fast our speed changes. So we'll say var speed change. It'll be a number, and I'm going to set mine equal to 1 to start. Okay, and where we're going to do this little bit of manipulation is in the enter frame listener. So right now, if key left is pressed, we are subtracting speed. But instead, what we want to do is we want to say X speed minus equals, what do we call that? Speed change? Yeah. Minus equals speed change. Okay? So when we press right, we want to say X speed plus equals speed change. Okay? And key up, we'll say Y speed minus equals speed change, and then same thing on the bottom, just change it to Y speed. So if we run this now, our player isn't going to move at all because we're just changing these speed values. We actually need to move the player by the speeds we just added. So mcplayer.x will be moved by x speed. Okay, we can copy this, and mcplayer.y will be moved by the y speed. So if we run this now, we're not going to get quite what we want because our player is never going to stop after we press. And if we actually go fast enough, he'll just keep going forever. So that's a problem. We need something to get him to stop. Well, how do we do that? We need to slowly start moving our x speed and our y speed so that they get closer and closer to 0. And how do we do that? Well, before we do anything, let's make a value called friction. So at the very top, under speed change, we'll say var friction. It'll be a number, and we'll set it equal to 0.95, let's say. It needs to be some kind of number that's between 0 and 1. So it needs to be between 0 and 1. Okay? So then scroll down to the bottom, and before we add x speed and y speed, we're going to take away a little chunk of them. So I'm going to say x speed times equals friction. And that's the same as saying x speed equals speed x times friction. And because friction is less than 1, we're going to take away, in this case, since we use 0.95, 5% of speed every time we run this equation. So I'm going to copy this and also say y speed times equals friction. And if we run this now, our player should actually stop when we let go of the key. It might take a little while because there's a certain amount of friction, or maybe not enough friction, but the player does eventually come to a complete stop and doesn't keep sliding off the edges of our stage. Great. But now there's this issue with, if the player holds down the key for so long, they'll actually just keep increasing in speed and they'll never really slow down. So what we need to do is give our player a speed limit. So if we scroll up to the top, underneath friction, or maybe above, wherever you'd like, say var speed limit, and I'll set mine equal to, I don't know, 10, so we can't go any faster than we did in our last example. And what we need to do now, I need to give it a type. So it can be a number or an integer, but I'll go with number in case we want to use some kind of fraction. So speed limit number is 10, and before we do any kind of math with our x speed and our y speed, we need to lock them into that speed limit. And this is called clamping. I believe Flash has a built-in function for clamping called Can we clamp? No, we can't. It's not built in. Sometimes you can get away with functions that are already made for clamping. But in this case, this is what it's called. So what we're going to do first, we're going to say if x speed is greater than the speed limit, so meaning x speed is positive and greater than the speed limit, then what we want to do is say x speed equals speed limit. So if they ever go over the speed limit, we'll just drop it down to the speed limit. Okay? So else, the other option is else if our x speed is less than the negative speed limit, meaning they'd be going to the left, and they'd be going to the left faster than whatever our speed limit is. Because you have to flip the signs around, because if it's higher than the positive speed limit, it'd be greater than. But if it's less than, because technically negative flips things around. It gets a little weird, but think about it, it'll make sense. We're going to do the same thing. X speed equals speed limit. So once we have that done, you can just copy and paste this whole little section here. And also do this for the y speed. So take one of these, set x to y, and now we should only be able to move a certain speed regardless of friction or anything like that. And I forgot a semicolon there, so I'll have to put it. But, but something is not quite working. See what's going on here? Let's play around with that. Speed equals speed. Let's make sure we have those semicolon. X speed, y speed, y speed. Here we go. Let's try this one more time. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot one thing. When we're less than negative speed limit, that means we're negative, so our sign needs to still be negative. So here, this needs to be x speed equals negative speed limit, and the y speed also needs to equal the negative speed limit. Otherwise, you're going to see that switch real quick where we flip from side to side. That's essentially how you implement bouncing, though, if that's what you maybe want to do. But so now I can only go so fast, and there is still easing, and we kind of slow to a stop. We don't just instantly stop. Because if you're driving in a car, you don't just instantly stop. You kind of roll a little bit when you hit on the brake. So we can call this clamp X. Down here we'll say clamp Y. Down here we'll say add friction. And maybe in parentheses say slowly move to 0. And then on the bottom here we can actually move the player. So it's good to add comments on, just because, like I said, you'll look at this later and have no idea what's going on. But now there's one more problem. This is pretty much everything, but our player can go off of our stage, and we need to handle that. So after we move our player down here, we need to lock them into the stage. So lock player into the stage. So how do we do that? Well, we got to check the x and the y values. So we'll start with the x. So say fmc player dot x is less than 0 minus, and then open close parentheses, and then put another parenthesis, and we can just finish off this if statement here. So in these parentheses here, we'll say 0 minus, or you can just do negative. But remember, our center point is at the center, so we need to subtract mc player dot width divided by 2.0, and then we'll set the player's x, so copy this here, equal to 0. Or no, not 0. Do we need it equal to 0? No, we need to probably set it equal to width plus 1. But let's just see how this works. This is probably going to be wrong. Because if we do that minus that, dun dun dun, it's not working. For several reasons. I'm sorry. Why would we subtract? That doesn't make any sense. Let me go over this math. So we'll say plus this, then we need to lock it into this value here. And this should work. Player width divided by 2. Sorry about that. I got a little mixed up with the math. So now it should go all the way to the left and stop. Okay? And now I will explain that. So since our registration point is at the center of our player, you can tell by selecting it where that crosshair is. When the player is all the way over here, this would be coordinate 0. As you can see, kind of in position and size, x is very close to 0. So if we don't want it to go halfway off the stage, we need to add in our check half of its width, which would be over here. Okay, so I'm going to center that up again. And that's how that sort of works. So that's the logic we're using to get all of these points. Okay, so if they're not less than 0 plus that, else if, and we can kind of copy this whole if statement right here, paste it. So, oops, there we go, else if. Actually, that looks nice and pretty. So else if the player.x is greater than, and we'll say stage.stage width minus the player width, then we're going to set them equal to this position here. So copy that, we'll say MC player.x equals that, and make sure you don't have any extra or too few parentheses, okay? Make sure you're doing the right thing. So now what that should do is lock it on the right side as well. So we go to the right, there we go, we can't go off the stage. If we go to the left, there we go, we also can't go off the stage. Okay? So now what else do we want to do? Well, if you notice that when we do that, we kind of stick to the side. So let's actually make our player bounce. And how would we do that? Well, if we go off the left side of the stage, our new speed, or sorry, our new x speed will need to be positive, right? Because if left is negative, we want to switch it to positive to bounce. So we'll say x speed equals math with a capital M dot abs. ABS stands for absolute value, which just means we're going to take whatever the value is, regardless of whether it's positive or negative. So -1 would turn into 1, 1 would still be 1. So we're going to set x speed equal to x speed, and that's it. We're just going to get the positive value. So, but if we go off the right side, so let's put some comments on here. We went off the left side, and then down here we'll say we went off the right side. So if we go off the right side, we need to set x speed equal to the left. So we should say negative math dot absolute value of whatever x speed is. If we run this now, we should get a little bouncing effect when we hit a wall, and we do. And pretty cool. So bounce, 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 bounce. So let's do the same with the y. So we are going to copy all of this here, down here, make some new lines, paste it, and now we're just going to change some things to y. So we want this to be y. If it's less than this, that means the player went off the top side. So we're going to set the y. Remember to change width to height. Sorry, forgot to do that. So here, this should be height. This up here should also be height. So x speed, nope, we're no longer dealing with x speed. We want y speed, and we'll change this to y speed. Okay? So here, mcplayer.y, stage.stage height, mcplayer.height. So we went off the bottom side. So we'll say mcplayer.y, stage.stage height, player.height, and y speed and y speed. Double check all that to make sure they are correct. So now if we run, we should have this thing that bounces off the top and the bottom, and that's pretty good. It's about what we like. So you can play around with the values at the top with speed limit, or is it, yeah, speed limit, speed change, and friction to get different sort of movement mechanics, but that's all there is to this. We are flipping booleans on and off, and then we're limiting speed and changing the values, and it's a little bit of physics if you have learned any kind of physics yet. It's using some kind of bootlegged physics, basically, but you could easily add on, some kind of gravity and make this a ball bouncing game or something along those lines, but that's all there is. enjoy. A little complicated maybe, but you get some cool movement mechanics. So I will see you eventually again, hopefully. Don't die on me.